We saw this one and we thought you guys would get a kick out of it. The Raiders, as Chris Berman would say, Pete, the Raiders. They have a new intro, and we thought you guys would get a kick out of it. They're the only black stadium that I know of anywhere, but in particular in the NFL. And they have the craziest fans. Pete and I have been on. Pete was a Raider. We've been on the planes flying into Oakland back in the day, or down into, what was it, Glendale, wherever,
LA,
Irwindale, or wherever, where the Raiders were playing. Craziest group of fans. I can't believe they let them on planes, Pete, dressed like they were, with the face paint and the skulls and all the rest of it. But take a look at this video, folks. I think you'll get a kick out of this.
A little bit of a welcome, kind of a Sandman sort of a thing, right?
Yep. He flips the coin with, a Raiders Nation on it.
The coin is cool. The
there
flag is cool.
Buccaneers.
Pirates of the Caribbean.
Oh, yeah. Commitment to excellence.
Oh, that's great.
And then the skull face underneath.
I'll tell you what, it's an intimidating start. They still got to play, they still got to close, but they might have the best opener of anybody in the NFL. And Woodson was a stud.
Oh, yeah.
This is the Michigan one, not the Purdue Woodson. This is the Michigan Woodson, and he was one of the better of the players out there, man. That guy was one of those guys that could play every position and return punts, kick off, and anything you wanted to do, he was on the field. And he knows how to smoke a cigar, too. He's not just
I was going to say, it looks a lot like our intro. I think the Raiders have copied our intro, Pete, of you and I sitting there sipping some bourbon and smoking cigars. But I do think it's pretty cool.
Absolutely. All right.
What do you got? Sports.
Let's jump into this right now. We got the NFL, and I wanted to headline this one, John, Money Machine. And we might hit on this tomorrow, but they have finally approved that PE firms can be investors into the NFL now, into those teams in the NFL. So that's kind of an interesting storyline. I never knew why that was even a big deal, John. I understand a little bit, but overall picture is it makes sense that they would approve, and they did approve of that. But that being said, how about the way the money is flowing right now in the NFL? So we've got quarterbacks that are making anywhere between $50 and $60 million a year. That's crazy. Taking up a fairly big percentage when you consider the fact that $255 million is the number for the salary cap. And these guys are, in some cases, most of them probably call it $55 million. So that pulls back what the rest of the guys are going to be able to get. Well, Justin Jefferson signed a 4-year, I think it was $140 million contract, John. CeeDee Lamb finally got the contract that he wanted. Now, my pushback, and I love CeeDee Lamb, I think he's deserving of any money he wants to get. But I just keep wondering, John, is it that big of a difference between JJ and the next guy and the next guy and the next guy? And these wide receivers are really hitting the bank right now. I mean, it's absolutely crazy. So CeeDee Lamb, I think it's somewhere close to what? He had a $38 million signing bonus. So that's pretty amazing. So now who's left? Well, you got Brandon Ayuk. He's a wide receiver for the 49ers. He wants to get paid. I don't know how they're going to do it because San Francisco's still got to get Trent Williams signed. Oh, and by the way, they got a quarterback making under $1 million a year. Meanwhile, guys in college football are getting $2, $3, $4 million a year through NIL. And meanwhile, Brock Purdy's making, let's roll up a little. He's making $1 million. But I mean, John, at some point they got to pay him that too. Jamar Chase from the Bengals, he wants to get paid. Some of these guys are holding out, some of them aren't, but regardless, there's money that has to come to some of these guys, and they're setting this bar up there. If I'm a GM right now, and I hope owners are listening because I'd love to do it, I'm not paying a wide receiver $40 million a year, $35 million a year. I think I can get almost as good for under 20. And I think that's a real number. So I think when you look at this, they need to start figuring this out, because the money to two positions on the team, if you combine them, and we're talking about 30 million plus 55 million, 85 million of the 255 on the where they're kind of holding you back. I mean, what do you think, John? How can the NFL keep doing this? Can they, or is this going to finally kind of blow up on them at some point?
Well, as you've talked about, Pete, the players through the collective bargaining agreement, they get 48%. That's nearly a 50-50 cut with the owners. Now, we both know the owners play a little game here. Some of that game is, oh yeah, well, that's of the revenue, but not of the stadium skyboxes, and not of, the other things that the owners get that might skew it a little more than 48-52. But let's just say, for instance, they're getting 48% of the pool of money. And Pete said this year it's 255. Well, and next year it'll be more. It's amazing, Pete. One of the things that they've done that's been smart was that they have basically negotiated away the first round and second round and third round draft kids from getting those huge contracts that now the veterans get, and you're only a veteran after your fourth year in the league. I mean, veteran in terms of they're signing them to a 3-year deal with a 1-year option, Pete. And, most teams would be foolish not to exercise that option, because, you're locking the kid in for a lot less than he's going to get when he goes to the free agent market, if that happens. I noticed, Pete, that it is the day that we see all the roster cuts come across, and the Tennessee Titans, cut a first-round pick from 2021, Caleb Farley. This guy was the 22nd pick in the draft. Back in the old days, just to put an exclamation point on this, Pete, the 22nd pick in the first round might have got a $30 million contract, $40 million contract. I mean, quarterbacks back then, before they negotiated this away, like Sam Bradford and those guys, they were getting 80 mil, things like that. A top cornerback could have got something like that. And now instead, that guy, they're walking away, they cut him. And I'm betting that they paid him less than 9 mil over the several years that he was in the league, Pete. So, yeah, you're right. I think you can find great players and fill up your roster and keep the players you need to by being more judicious with the cash than just saying, yeah, I guess wide receivers get 40 mil. I think you can do better, and I'm betting somebody like you would do better.
All right, I appreciate that. By the way, NCAA football, we already kicked it off last week, but you weren't here yesterday. But last Saturday, John, they played in Ireland. They were in Dublin, and it was Florida State playing Georgia Tech. Georgia Tech ended up winning that football game. Really close. They kicked a field goal to win it at the end, but they also ran for almost 200 yards against Florida State. They were number 10. I suspect that Florida State is going to drop significantly from that level of ranked number 10 in the country after a loss to somebody who wasn't ranked. So that makes it kind of interesting and makes it a little bit tougher on them. And remember, I was one of the guys, I think you were too, John, but last year when they lost their quarterback, I thought that affected the entire ability of that team to go any further as far as the national championship's concerned. So they were left out. Well, now you've got 12 teams, not 4. So this is just one loss, but this loss might really bite them if Georgia Tech doesn't prove to be really an outstanding football team this year. And they might not be in that 12, but we'll see. Time will tell. Thursday, we've got 2 games, John, in front of us in college football that are actually somewhat interesting and meaningful. The first one, it's me. I'm talking about it, but it's the Gophers against North Carolina because it's ACC Big Ten. It's not the Big Ten playing against somebody, that's a far lower group. And I'll tell you what, that North Carolina is a heck of a football team. I think Mac Brown does a great job year in and year out. John, here's where he's been. Appalachian State, Oklahoma, Tulane, North Carolina, Texas, and back to North Carolina after he spent a few years at ESPN where I actually got to know him. Well, he's a great guy, man. 73 years old. He can still bring it, and he's going to bring his guys up here. I think my Gophers will have their work cut out for them, but I think they can beat them. I think the Gophers did a lot in the offseason to change who they are. But most importantly is also a game that night is Colorado playing North Dakota State. They're playing at Colorado. That's your Colorado, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
And Primetime Sanders is finding himself getting into a little bit of hot water right now because he doesn't want to talk to the media. He's ticked off at the media and basically thinks they twist things. And Paul Feinbaum, and I should have grabbed the clip because you would have loved it, but he basically called him a bully and a hypocrite, which means that Paul Feinbaum is not going to have a chance to talk to Neon Deion probably ever again after saying that. But to some degree, he might be right. He doesn't want to do, John. He wants to specifically pick who in the media he's going to talk to. I'm not sure you can do that, but I will say this. North Dakota State, if they're too distracted by what Neon Deion's doing, North Dakota State might bite these guys. I'm not saying they will, but that is one of the very best schools. They were D3 forever, D2, they were D1, and now all of a sudden you look at this school and these guys are kicking butt, John. So it might be pretty daggone interesting, that game. And that's week 1. That's Thursday at 7:00.
Yep. That's going to be an interesting game, Pete, from the standpoint of, like you say, will Deion, when some reporters and so forth come rushing out to talk to him either before the game or halftime or end of the game, is he going to answer questions? Because he has said to the CBS reporter that was at the Buffalo's practice, I don't answer questions from CBS because he said I'm one of the worst coaches in this conference. I'm at the bottom rather than the top. Well, like you said, Pete, he's got to earn it. He brought a lot of flash and a lot of enthusiasm, and I can tell you firsthand from my daughter that you can't get a ticket to Colorado Buffalo football.
Right.
Students can't even get the tickets anymore. I mean, if you didn't get in the lottery and get it early, and she tried, you don't have tickets. Now, I imagine you'll buy them at the game or look around for somebody in the parking lot selling them before the game or whatever. But that's how popular it is, and that's all Deion. That's Deion, that's his son, that is Hunter, and all those players that he brought in. But now they got to win. And they got to win more than the games they're supposed to win at the beginning of the year. They got to win the big ones. Last year, they started off with TCU, and that was a big one. This year, you're not starting off with TCU, and everybody is lined up on you. They all know what you got, so you better be able to surprise them. And this is not a smash mouth, team like the kind that Michigan runs. This is a team that's based on how Shedeur Sanders is going to do throwing the ball. And if he struggles, that team is going to struggle. The defense is going to be on the field too long and all that kind of stuff. Now, what goes in their favor, Pete, and you know this, and I'll finish up with this, is that they play at altitude. It's a mile high. So people tend to fade in the second half of these games. I've seen it. Even really good teams, when you play there, it doesn't matter what kind of shape you're in. If you've not trained at altitude, you're going to be sucking wind. Now, some guys can suck it up and make it through that, but other teams tend to fade. So if you're just staying with Colorado in the first half, that's going to be a problem for you in the second half. That's my prediction.
They better not sleep on this team. By the way, I misspoke. I said D3. They were never D3. They're D2, and now D1. But North Dakota State is not a team you want to sleep on. I mean, those guys, they come to play just like South Dakota State. And if people overlook them, and I don't say that they are, I think they understand that these guys are pretty damn good. But if they happen to look past them, John, up to the next team and the next team, and they figure this is just a win, that's going to be a problem for them. They'll find themselves in a spot maybe late in the third or fourth quarter where they're going to have to score some touchdowns to win that football game, because North Dakota State is no joke.
No joke, truly. South Dakota, North Dakota, those teams, they live to play for those fans. They don't put 55,000 in arenas, but some of them are playing in dome stadiums with like 17,000, and it's deafening. because they get some good players. Just take a look at NFL rosters and you'll see it.